The cameras caught someone walking the aisles at 2:37 a.m. The store closed at 10. That's how it started. Just an alert on my phone, motion detected after hours. I worked nights at a small grocery store off Route 9. Nothing special, just a quiet job, stocking shelves and checking the security feeds before locking up. The sound of refrigeration units was constant, a low hum that filled the empty building. At night, the store always felt too big. Aisles stretching into shadows that seemed deeper than they should have been. When the motion alert came in, I almost ignored it. We got false triggers sometimes, insects, air vents, the flicker from old fluorescent bulbs, but this one was different. The timestamp read 2:37 a.m., a full 4 hours after closing. I logged into the security system remotely. Black and white camera feed loaded, grainy, slightly distorted. The motion came from aisle 7. That aisle always made me uneasy. It had the tall mirrors at the end, angled toward the checkout. The lights there tended to flicker. The screen flickered once, then stabilized. The aisle looked empty. Just rows of cereal boxes, canned goods and cleaning supplies. Then in the reflection at the far end, I saw it, a shape. Someone, or something, standing just outside the frame. I paused the video, looked closer. The reflection didn't match the rest of the aisle. It was off by half a second, like it was delayed. At first I assumed it was a glitch. Old system, spotty power grid, stuff like that happens. But when I scrubbed through the footage, the figure stayed there. Still, unmoving. The body faintly visible only through the mirror. I tried zooming in, couldn't make out a face. Just the outline of a person standing perfectly straight. No visible motion, no blinking. And for some reason, the timestamp froze for 3 seconds, then jumped ahead. When it resumed, the figure was closer. I switched to another camera angle, one showing the end of the aisle. Nothing. Empty space, dark floor tiles, faint hum of the coolers, no movement at all. But the reflection in the mirror still showed the shape. Slightly clearer now, head tilted toward the lens. By the time I realized I was holding my breath, my throat had gone dry. The air around me felt heavier, as if the noise from the refrigerators had deepened somehow. A low vibration that made my chest feel tight. I rewound again, frame by frame. No entry. No movement through doors, no motion near the back exits. The system would have triggered. Still, at 2:37 a.m., the camera recorded that reflection. Unblinking, unmoving. When I came in that morning, the manager was already standing in the back office, eyes glued to the monitor. He didn't even look at me, just muttered, "You see it too?" At first I didn't. The camera view was still, just the dim aisles, the humming coolers, the clock blinking 2:37 a.m. Then the light in aisle 7 flickered once, twice, and something in the mirror moved that shouldn't have. It wasn't dramatic, not a jump scare. Just raw. A shoulder shifted when nothing was there. The kind of detail you notice only because it breaks something quiet. I rewound the footage, watched again. The reflection moved a little earlier this time, like it was waiting for me to notice. I remember the smell of coffee in that room, going stale. The soft buzz of the monitor. The manager leaned in and froze the frame. "You see that line?" he asked, pointing at the edge of the reflection. "It's sharper than the others." He was right. The reflections of the shelves were blurred, soft around the corners. But that one, the figure, had hard edges, like it was lit from a different source. When he zoomed in, the pixels broke apart, and the face looked more like a smudge of light than a person. Still, the shape of a head, shoulders, maybe a jacket. He played the footage forward 1 second. The figure was gone. Then backward, it was there again. Forward, gone. The footage didn't show movement. It was like the frame itself had been replaced. Around noon, I walked through aisle 7 myself. The mirrors at the end caught my reflection perfectly. Tired eyes, name tag crooked, pale skin from too many night shifts. I stood there, watching my own breathing. There was a flicker of the overhead bulb, and for just 1 second, the person in the mirror didn't blink when I did. I stepped back fast enough to knock over a box of cereal. The sound broke the silence, and everything looked normal again. The manager didn't believe what I saw. He said I was probably tired, maybe watching too much of the footage. But that night, when I went to clock out, he stayed behind. Said he wanted to check one more thing. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how the reflection's head tilted just slightly differently than mine. Not wrong enough to be impossible. Just off by a beat. like watching someone try to mimic you. By morning, I decided to go back and look again. The office was dark, the computer still on. The last clip loaded automatically, timestamp 3:14 a.m. That's when the figure looked straight into the camera. It wasn't standing in aisle 7 anymore. It was behind the cashier counter, my counter. And for a full 47 minutes, it didn't move. No breathing, no blinking, just standing as the flickering lights pulsed around it. I watched every second. When the timestamp jumped forward, 3:452, 3:79, 3:831, the figure was closer each time. By the end, it filled half the frame. But its face wasn't visible, just darkness where a face should be. When I showed the manager, he stared at it for a long time, his jaw tightening. Then he told me to go home early and shut the office door behind me. I waited in the parking lot for 15 minutes, watching the store lights dim out one by one. At 10:03 p.m., they should have all gone black. But from the street, I could still see one faint glow, aisle 7. It flickered in that same rhythm I'd seen on the camera. I wanted to leave, but something made me walk back up to the glass doors. The lock clicked open on its own. Inside, it was cold, colder than usual, like the freezers had been left open. The hum of the coolers was louder than before. The lights above aisle 7 buzzed. Halfway down the aisle, the mirrors reflected everything. Shelves, boxes, lights, but not me. I blinked, looked again, nothing. I stepped closer and my reflection snapped back suddenly, like it had been waiting for the right angle. But I wasn't alone in it anymore. Over my shoulder there was someone else, blurry, tall, standing too close. I turned around fast. No one. When I faced the mirror again, it was gone too. I left everything, my bag, my jacket, my name tag, and walked out without locking the doors. I told myself I'd quit. But the next day, I got a text from the manager. Footage looks fine now. Must have been a glitch. Attached was a single screenshot, timestamped 2:37 a.m., same aisle, same angle, only one difference. I was in the frame this time, standing behind the counter, staring directly into the lens. I didn't respond to the manager's text. I just stared at the photo. I didn't remember standing there, didn't remember turning toward the camera, didn't remember that blank, hollow expression that looked like me, but wasn't. The shadows on my face were wrong. The overhead lights in the store always came from the right, but the reflection in the image was lit from below. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the timestamp burned into the dark, 2:37 before. By morning, I convinced myself it was just stress. Maybe a double exposure, a corrupted frame. That's what I told myself when I went back in to pick up my things. The store looked normal, too normal. Everything was where it should have been. The hum of the fridges, the soft clatter of the lights warming up. But there was no one at the counter. No manager, no customers. I went straight to aisle 7. The mirrors had been cleaned, wiped so well I could see every shelf in perfect clarity. Except one thing. In the bottom right corner, there was a faint smudge, like a fingerprint, except deeper. When I leaned in close, I realized it wasn't a print, it was inside the glass. I backed away, heart beating slower but heavier. From a few feet back, the smudge looked like an eye, and for just 1 second, it blinked. I ran back to the office. The monitor was still on, a frozen frame showing the checkout counter. The feed was paused at 3:14 a.m., the moment where the figure had looked straight at the camera. Only now, the figure was gone. In its place was the manager, sitting at the desk. Same posture, same chair I was standing in now. Except I hadn't seen him all morning. I reached for the keyboard to rewind the footage. The screen flickered once, then the cursor moved on its own, dragging the timeline forward. The new timestamp read 3:15:23. The office lights went out on the feed. The reflection on the monitor brightened slightly. Behind the manager, in the grainy darkness, a second shape stood in the doorway. Its face leaned toward the lens. Then the feed cut to black. I heard something in the hallway outside the office. Just the sound of a shoe brushing tile, slow, deliberate. I turned off the monitor and listened. Nothing for a moment. Then faintly, that same refrigerator hum. But it wasn't coming from the back of the store. It was coming from the speakers of the computer. I looked back at the screen. Even though I'd turned it off, the faint static image of aisle 7 was showing again. Low contrast, flickering. At first, it was empty. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw a shape at the end of the aisle, motionless, facing the mirror. And in the reflection, it wasn't alone. There were two shapes now, one taller, one shorter, both perfectly still. I blinked, and the taller one tilted its head slightly, like it had heard me breathing. That was when the office door creaked open on its own. No wind, no movement, just a slow, dry sound that echoed through the empty store. The screen static got louder. The figure in the mirror leaned closer to the glass until its face filled the frame. But the face wasn't clear anymore. It looked pixelated, flickering between my own features and something that wasn't human. Eyes too wide, mouth slightly open like it was mid-whisper. Then it stopped flickering and smiled. I shut off the monitor completely and backed out of the room. The sound didn't stop. It kept humming even after the power was off. When I finally stepped outside, it was almost sunrise. The air was cold, quiet, still. The front door locked behind me with a soft click. I didn't look back at the glass. But later, when I drove past the store that night, the lights inside were still on, and even through the reflection of the windows, I could see something faint. A figure standing behind the counter, facing the parking lot. It didn't move, didn't wave, just watched. A week later, the store shut down. Electrical problems, they said. But when I tried to check the security archives online, the whole system was gone. Every file, every timestamp, except one. 2:37 a.m. That single clip kept reappearing in my downloads folder. Even after I deleted it, I finally opened it again out of exhaustion more than curiosity. Same grainy camera, same aisle, same flicker. Only difference this time, the reflection didn't wait. It was already standing behind the camera. And I swear, for half a second before the feed froze, it leaned close enough to whisper something. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but I think I understood. Because right after that, the video ended and my screen turned black, except for one sentence faintly typed at the bottom corner. The store closed at 10. I didn't go back for a few days, but the store never really left my head. Every time I opened my phone, that clip, 2:37 a.m., would be there again. Different file name, same footage. Even if I deleted it, it re-downloaded itself as soon as I connected to Wi-Fi. The thumbnail was always the same frozen frame. Aisle 7, the mirrors, and the faint outline of someone who shouldn't have been there. On the fourth night, I drove by again. The parking lot was dark, except for one light still buzzing over the entrance. It flickered twice, then went steady, like it knew I was watching. Through the glass doors, I could see a faint glow from the back office. The monitor, it shouldn't have had power. The whole building had been disconnected. I parked across the street and watched for a long time. At first, nothing moved. Then I saw a silhouette pass slowly in front of the screen. The shape was wrong for a person, too thin, neck at the wrong angle. The glow dimmed, then brightened again. And that's when I noticed the monitor wasn't showing the store. It was showing the street. I was on the screen. I left. Didn't even start the engine right away, just coasted downhill until the lights disappeared in the mirror. But even after I turned the corner, the reflection of the monitor's light was still there, faint on the inside of my windshield. That night, the clip changed again. It started normally, grainy footage, empty aisles. But this time, instead of the timestamp jumping forward, it started counting backward. 2:37 a.m., 2:36 a.m., 2:35 a.m. As it rewound, something else came into frame. A man walking with a clipboard. My manager, he stopped in aisle 7, looked directly into the mirror and spoke, though there was no audio. His mouth formed the words, "Help me." Then the feed distorted. When the image cleared, there was someone standing behind him, shoulder to shoulder. The manager's reflection moved first, stepped forward, while the real one stayed still. And when it reached the edge of the mirror, it didn't stop. It stepped out. The feed cut to black. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the police. They said they'd already checked the building and found nothing. But when I asked about the manager, the officer hesitated. "Which one?" he said. I told him his name. He flipped through his clipboard, frowned, and shook his head. Said the store hadn't had an active manager for 6 months. Said the leaseholder died in May, alone in his office. I left before he could finish. When I got to my car, the interior light was already on. The dashboard clock read 2:37. That night I kept every light on in my apartment. Didn't matter. The shadows looked too familiar. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. No name on the screen, just an empty notification bubble. When I opened it, the file had downloaded again. Size 237, timestamp 2:37 a.m. I didn't touch it for a long time, but curiosity wins over fear when silence stretches too far. I pressed play. The footage didn't start in the store this time. It started in my kitchen. Same angle as the grocery store cameras. High corner, black and white. I could see myself sitting at the table, phone in hand. The image lagged by a few seconds, like it was almost live. Behind me, down the hall, a door began to open, slowly. At first I thought it was a reflection, some kind of visual glitch, but then the me on screen turned around, and there was someone else standing there. No face, just the outline of a uniform. The recording froze, then skipped. The timestamp jumped back to 2:37 a.m. again. I unplugged my router, pulled the battery from my phone, powered down everything I could. Didn't help. The screen stayed on, faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Then words appeared in the lower corner, gray against black. Mirror feed active. My bathroom door creaked open down the hall. No wind, no movement, just the soft hum of electricity, like the store's refrigerators. I didn't go check. I already knew what I'd see. By morning, the phone was dead. When I turned it back on, the gallery was empty. Every photo, every video gone, except one new image. A still frame. Grainy. Me sitting at the store's front counter, eyes half open, timestamp frozen. That was the moment the first alert ever came through. They demolished the store a month later, said the wiring was too dangerous, that the footage system couldn't be salvaged. But every now and then, people say they still get motion alerts from that address. Different users, different nights, each one at exactly the same time. 2:37 a.m. Sometimes when I walk past a storefront after hours, I catch my reflection in the glass. And for a second, I think I see the aisles behind me, the mirrors, the faint flicker. Then the reflection smiles. That's when I stop looking, because deep down, I know the cameras never turned off. They just moved somewhere new. The store closed at 10. Story 2. The apartment hallway loop. I work maintenance at a mid-rise on the edge of the city. Old brick, narrow halls, an elevator that hums like a tired refrigerator. Every night after the tenants settle in, the building gets quiet enough that you can hear the pipes breathe. 2 weeks ago, the night manager asked me to check the security feed. A tenant from the 5th floor, room 5B, hadn't shown up for work in 3 days. Her name was Lena. Mid-30s, lived alone. Always left her trash out on schedule. Always nodded goodnight when she passed me in the hall. The footage started normal. Elevator opening, closing, a flicker every few minutes. Then, at 1:23 a.m., motion triggered the camera outside 5B. Lena came out holding a black trash bag. She looked tired, eyes half closed. Walked toward the end of the hall where the chute should have been. Only thing is, there isn't one on that floor. It was sealed off years ago. The footage ran 20 seconds, then looped. I didn't notice at first. It looked identical. But after the third loop, something felt off. The bag was smaller, and the red record light on the elevator panel reflected brighter, like it was closer to the camera. I thought maybe the system had glitched, so I checked the timestamps. They were counting backward. I tried another angle, the camera by the elevator doors. The same loop played there too, perfectly synced. Lena walking down the hall, trash bag in hand, each pass shorter, lighter. By the fourth loop, her hand was empty. She just walked, staring straight ahead. The light above the elevator flickered once, twice, then froze mid-blink, and in that frozen half-light, she stopped. Turned her head toward the lens. The feed stuttered, then jumped ahead 6 frames. She was gone. The building's night hum filled the empty audio track. Pipes, distant traffic, nothing human. But underneath it, very faint, was a rhythmic sound, like breathing pressed against glass. I leaned closer to the screen, turned the volume all the way up. It wasn't coming from the speakers, it was coming from the hallway camera itself. That's when the red indicator light blinked on. The live feed was active, and in the frame, for the first time, I saw movement again. Something shifting just at the edge of the wall beside the elevator. I switched the feed to full screen. The motion detector light outside 5B stayed on, even though no one was visible. The wall beside the elevator looked wrong. The edges were too sharp, like the texture was still loading in a video game. Then a thin line appeared, vertical, almost invisible unless you stared. A seam, right where the drywall should have been smooth. I thought it was a trick of the camera lens, so I went upstairs to check in person. 5th floor hallway. Same humming from the elevator shaft, same dim emergency bulbs casting yellow across the carpet. Nothing moved. The air felt colder at the far end. When I reached the wall, I touched the spot I'd seen on screen. Smooth paint, but the chill behind it was immediate, like a freezer door. I pressed harder and heard something faint on the other side, a slow drag, like fabric brushing concrete. I stepped back. The light above me flickered twice. Then my radio crackled. Voice, 123. I froze. No one was on duty except me, and the radio wasn't tuned to any active channel. The voice came again, quieter, closer. 123, she's leaving. I shut the radio off. Back in the control room, the monitor was still running, only now the loop had changed again. The frame didn't start with Lena leaving her door. It started in the middle of the hallway, halfway through her walk. Her expression had shifted, eyes wider, mouth slightly open like she just realized something. And she wasn't carrying the bag anymore. She was holding the handle of the elevator, just standing there, waiting for doors that never opened. The timestamp read 22, then 22:59. Still going backward. I fast-forwarded manually, but the footage resisted, like the slider didn't want to move past a certain second. When it finally jumped ahead, it skipped the entire hour between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. completely. The next visible frame was me, standing in the hallway, touching the wall. Same camera angle, same exact moment that had just happened minutes earlier. But in the footage, something stood directly behind me. A shape in the reflection of the elevator door. It wasn't Lena. It wasn't even human enough to be sure what it was. The frame glitched once, then froze. The hallway light above me went out. That was the last clear footage before the real nightmare started, when the loop began to copy itself across every camera in the building. When the loop spread to every camera, I knew it wasn't a software bug. The feed for each floor started showing the same segment from 5B's hallway, identical in every detail. Even the peeling paint by the exit sign appeared in all of them. 12 cameras, 12 hallways, all showing the same recording at the same time, except for one difference. In each version, Lena stood in a slightly different position. A few inches forward here, a few degrees turned there. By the final camera, she was looking straight at the lens. The night manager called around 2 a.m., asking if I'd triggered a test cycle. I told him no, that the system was doing it on its own. He asked me to send screenshots. When I tried, the computer refused to capture them. Each file saved as a black square with the words, "Live feed active." I looked back at the monitors. All 12 showed Lena again. But now the elevator doors behind her were open, just wide enough to see darkness inside. She started walking toward them, slow, deliberate. Halfway there, the footage froze. Then it reversed, frame by frame. She walked backward, back into her apartment, door closing behind her. Timestamp read 1:22:40, then 1:22:41. Counting forward again. The entire building seemed to breathe. I decided to check the hallway myself. I needed to see if anything matched what I was watching. When the elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, the first thing I noticed was the red light above them. It wasn't supposed to glow that bright. It painted the walls with a low, bloody shimmer. The hall was empty. Silent, except for the soft hum of the building's air system. The door to 5B was closed, same as always. But the air felt wrong again. Heavy, like walking underwater. Every step sounded muffled, delayed. When I reached the end of the hallway, I looked at the spot where the old trash chute had been sealed. The paint looked fresh, but the edges were uneven. I touched the wall again, cold, hollow. The moment my fingers pressed in, the red light above flickered once, and the elevator behind me opened on its own. Inside, the floor indicator was dead. No lights, no numbers, just the open doorway waiting. I stepped closer. The reflection in the polished metal doors showed the hallway behind me. At first it was empty. Then, halfway down the hall, I saw movement. Someone stepping out of 5B. It was Lena. Same clothes, same tired face. She walked slowly toward me, trash bag in hand. Only the bag wasn't moving. It hung stiffly, like it was filled with something solid. She didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just kept walking. I backed into the elevator, hand searching for the button panel. There weren't any buttons. Just the faint reflection of her getting closer. The elevator doors never closed. They just waited, half open, like they were listening. The reflection behind me shimmered again. Lena was closer now. Her steps didn't make a sound. Her shadow stretched unnaturally long, almost reaching my shoes. Then the lights above flickered once, and every bulb in the hall went out. For a second, the world was black. Only the low hum of the building's power remained. Then the emergency lights kicked in, red, dim, bleeding through the silence. She wasn't in the hallway anymore. But her reflection still was. The glass surface of the elevator door showed her standing right behind me, only inches away. I could feel the warmth of breath on my neck, but when I turned around, nothing. Just the cold metal wall and the smell of dust. The camera in the corner of the elevator blinked once, then twice. A faint click, 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 like a camera shutter, every few seconds. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the building's security app. New motion detected, hallway 5B. When I opened it, the feed showed me inside the elevator. From above, and behind me, Lena's figure had tilted, eyes wide. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, screen flickering. For a moment, the reflection in the doors didn't match the angle of the real elevator. I was standing still, but the reflection of me took a step backward. Then came the whisper, soft, broken, layered, like someone speaking through multiple recordings of the same voice. It came from the vent above the elevator door. You shouldn't have watched the loop. My stomach clenched. The red light above the door flickered faster, almost in rhythm with my heartbeat. The elevator floor vibrated just slightly. Then the door slid fully shut. The panel above them came alive again, but the numbers didn't climb. They reversed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then it didn't stop. B1, B2, B3. The air grew colder with every passing second. Frost began to form along the seams of the doors. When they finally opened, I expected the lobby, or maybe the basement storage. But it wasn't either. It was the same hallway. Identical to 5B, same flickering light, same crooked exit sign, even the same door numbers. Except one difference. All the doors were slightly open, and everyone had a black trash bag sitting in front of it. I stepped out slowly. The floor was wet beneath my shoes, like condensation, or something had leaked. From inside one of the bags came a faint shift, as if something inside was breathing. The sound of the elevator behind me changed. It wasn't humming anymore. It was playing back the click, click, click camera sound, on loop. I took another step, and every exit sign flickered at once. For a split second, the red glow illuminated something painted on the wall above the apartment doors. The loop keeps what watches. Then all the lights died. The next moment, I was back in the security office. Every monitor showed static, except one. Camera 5B. Lena was standing in front of her door again. She smiled this time. Her hand reached toward the lens. Then the feed glitched. For a single frame, the figure on screen wasn't her. It was me, holding my phone, staring into the camera, eyes blank. The timestamp flickered between 1:23:101 and 1:23 again, frozen, looped. The recording kept playing endlessly, and from the speaker in the corner of the room came a faint, delayed echo. The security camera caught her leaving at 1:23 a.m. Static swallowed the rest. The problem is, I leaned closer to the screen, heart pounding, breath fogging the glass. She never left. I don't remember leaving the security room, but somehow I was standing in the hallway again. It looked normal, too normal. The red light was gone. The hum had stopped. Even the air felt still, like the entire building was holding its breath. Only the faint click of the exit sign's relay broke the silence. Each click echoed longer than it should have, like the sound was bouncing through a tunnel. Then I noticed something wrong. My shoes were wet again. Not from water. The floor was reflecting light that wasn't there. It looked like liquid glass, stretching down the hall. I followed it. Every step left no sound, no echo. The hallway stretched farther than it had before, door after door, each one identical. The numbers started repeating. 502, 503, 504, 502, 503, 504. Like the building itself was looping. Halfway down, I saw her. Lena, standing in front of her apartment, head bowed, hands still holding that shrinking trash bag. But her shadow was wrong. It reached across the floor, and into the opposite door frame, like it belonged to another version of her on the other side of the wall. I called out her name. My voice came out quieter than I expected, muffled, like I was speaking through glass. She didn't move. But her reflection in the door window did. It lifted its head, staring straight at me. Her eyes looked like mine now. Empty, drained, no fear, no thought. Then both versions of her smiled, and the lights went out again. I don't know how long it stayed dark. I remember hearing that soft click 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 sound again, only now it wasn't from a camera. It was coming from inside my chest. When the emergency lights came back on, I was standing in front of the security monitors again. But this time, the room wasn't real. It was projected, faint outlines, thin like air, like I was watching the idea of a room. On the screens, the hallway was empty. Only one camera was active. Feed 5B. It showed someone standing exactly where I was. A dark outline, same shape, same movement. He looked up at the camera, and I realized I was watching myself in real time. I raised my hand. So did he. Then, one frame behind, he kept moving even after I stopped. I checked the corner monitor again. Lena's door was open. The bag she'd been holding was gone, but something was left inside the doorway. A phone, still recording. The live feed flickered to full screen. The timestamp, 1:23 a.m. The video played backward for a few seconds, then forward again. And that's when I saw it. The person walking out of Lena's apartment wasn't her anymore. It was me. Same clothes, same limp from the fall I'd taken earlier. The reflection in the elevator door showed him, me, carrying that same black bag down the hallway. The bag moved, just slightly. I wanted to shut off the feed, but the keyboard was frozen. Every key I touched made the timestamp skip back another second. The air got heavier. Static bled through the speakers, whispering fragments of my own voice from earlier in the night. There was no trash chute. She never left. You shouldn't have watched the loop. Then the final phrase, slower this time. Distorted through multiple layers of recording. Now it's your turn. The monitors all went black. Except one. A live camera view. Looking directly into the security office, I saw the chair, the console, the monitors, and in the center of the frame, me. Sitting there, motionless. The feed didn't move for almost 3 minutes. Then, just before it cut to static, my head slowly turned toward the lens, and I smiled. I woke up to daylight pouring through the hallway window. But it wasn't the same building anymore. The numbers on the doors were gone. The paint was peeling. No sound, no hum of electricity, no wind outside, just stillness. I tried the elevator, but the panel only showed one button, 5B. When I pressed it, the doors closed and opened again to the same hallway. Now the walls were covered in photos, hundreds of them. Every photo was a still frame from the security feed. Each one showed someone different. Men, women, people I didn't know. All of them walking down this same hallway. And in every photo, one thing stayed the same, the timestamp. 1:23 a.m. I found one photo at the very end of the row, freshly printed, still warm. It was me, standing in the hallway, holding the camera. At the bottom, faintly printed, uploaded to feed, loop confirmed. Then the lights flickered once. The red exit sign came back on, the elevator dinged softly, and from behind the closed doors came that voice, low, mechanical, layered through static. Next entry, confirmed. The elevator opened. Inside, the reflection was waiting. It smiled again, and this time, I stepped in. The security camera caught her leaving at 1:23 a.m. The problem is, she never left. Story 3. The motion alert that didn't belong. It was 3:11 a.m. when the motion detector picked up movement in the security office. That line sounds simple, ordinary. But the strange part is, I was already there. Sitting at the desk, watching the screens, drinking cold coffee. The alert tone was soft, barely louder than the hum of the old monitors around me. It was the kind of sound you'd normally ignore, a quick ping from the outdated analog system. But after working night shifts for almost 2 years, you learn what's routine and what isn't. This wasn't. The display blinked once. Motion detected Zone 3, security office. That's this room. At first I assumed it was a glitch. The analog cameras did that sometimes, especially when the air conditioning kicked in or a moth crossed near the lens. Still, the timestamp made me pause. 03 Henry. It was precise. Too precise. I rubbed my eyes and leaned toward the main screen. The feed showed a familiar view. My desk, the monitors, the single overhead light buzzing faintly. Same layout. Same coffee cup sitting in front of the keyboard. Everything normal. Except one thing. On the feed, I wasn't moving. At all. I blinked once in real life. My reflection on the monitor didn't. The building was quiet that night. A light drizzle outside, faint thunder rolling in the distance. The kind of storm that makes the city sound hollow. I glanced at the wall clock. 3:12. The fluorescent hand ticked with a faint electric pop every second. My shift usually ran from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 12 hours of stillness. No one came in or out after midnight, just me, the hum of the vending machines, and the sound of the elevator running on its timer test every hour. Tonight, though, the hum felt different. It had a rhythm, almost like breathing. I tried to shake it off. Leaning closer, I tapped the camera controls and switched to a live feed of the lobby. Empty. Then the stairwell. Still empty. Then the hallway outside this room. Just the green glow of the exit sign and the reflection of a cleaning cart left at the far end. All normal. So I switched back to the analog feed and froze. The monitor now showed me slumped over the desk, head down, arms limp at my sides. I looked down at myself. I was sitting upright, wide awake. But on screen, that version of me wasn't. The timestamp rolled to 3:11:29. I checked my phone. A 3-second delay. That was standard for the older system. But the version of me on screen, the one that looked asleep, started to move. It twitched, shifted slightly in the chair, then lifted its head, just barely. The speaker above the screen crackled once, and through that static, a sound came out, faint, like a recording being played backward. Then it cleared. Wake up. I froze. It wasn't my imagination. The voice had come from the feed itself, from that old analog line that wasn't even connected to the building's audio system anymore. I stared as the figure on screen, me, sat up fully, eyes half open, looking straight into the camera. The delay was still 3 seconds, but suddenly, I couldn't tell which version was ahead anymore. I lifted my hand slowly, waving at the lens above the desk. On screen, I did the same, except the reflection of me moved first, by a fraction of a second. That was wrong. The analog system wasn't predictive. It couldn't show what hadn't happened yet. But there it was, me, responding before I had even moved. The overhead light flickered once, and the speaker hissed again. Wake up. This time, the sound came from behind me. I turned around, fast. The room was empty. Same desk, same stacked folders on the counter, same humming vending machine down the hall. But my coffee cup was shaking slightly. The surface rippled like something had just moved past it. On the monitor, I watched myself stand up, even though I hadn't. My heart started racing. The timestamp hit 3:12:59 and froze for a second. The video stuttered, one frame glitching into another, then resumed. Now the me on screen was standing right where I was, staring at the lens, unmoving. And then I noticed something that made the back of my neck crawl. In the reflection of the glass door behind him, another figure was standing in the corner of the room. It wasn't me. The figure in the reflection didn't move at first. It was just there, a faint outline, standing in the far left corner of the room behind the me in the footage. Too faint to make out details, just a shape darker than the shadows around it. I blinked once. The feed flickered. When the screen came back, it was gone. But the timestamp hadn't changed. It still read 03:39, frozen on that same frame, like the camera itself didn't know what time it was anymore. I reached toward the mouse, hand shaking slightly, and tried to scrub back the footage by a few seconds. The feed didn't move, the controls didn't respond. The analog monitor made a soft click inside its casing, like static discharging. And then, it started playing again. Except now, the feed wasn't just from the security office. The system had switched itself to the hallway camera outside my room. I didn't touch anything. The grainy view showed the empty hallway, same exit sign glowing pale green at the end. The reflection of the cleaning cart's wheel barely visible in the corner. But then something crossed the frame, fast, low, too quick to register. I leaned forward, replayed it mentally. It hadn't looked like a person, more like the blur of motion when you walk too close to a camera. But the hall was 30 feet long. No one could have crossed it that fast. The motion sensor pinged again. Motion detected, Zone 3, security office. My blood went cold. That was me. Again? I turned around in the real room. Nothing. Only the hum of the fluorescent light and the smell of cold coffee. Still, something in the air felt heavier, like the oxygen had thickened, a quiet pressure against my chest. On the monitor, the hallway feed flickered and returned to the office view. The me on screen was still standing, but he wasn't facing the desk anymore. He was facing the camera. Same posture, same clothes, except for one small detail. The reflection of his eyes caught the light differently, like two glass beads reflecting static. He leaned forward slightly, close enough that the screen glitched again, and then his mouth opened. No sound came out at first, just a low vibration in the audio feed like feedback. But as the signal stabilized, I heard it clearly. "You're watching the wrong one." The speaker hissed and cut out. Every hair on my arm stood up. I spun around again, half expecting someone to be standing behind me this time. But the room was empty. Then I noticed something impossible. My coffee cup, the one that had been sitting half full on the desk, was now empty. I hadn't touched it. And on the camera feed, I watched my other self pick it up, tilt it back, and set it down again. He looked satisfied. I looked terrified. The air conditioner clicked off suddenly, and the silence that followed felt alive. I could hear every tiny sound, the soft buzz from the monitor, the creak of the building settling, even the slow, steady beat of my own heart. Then came another noise, a faint scraping, somewhere to my left. I turned my head slowly toward the metal filing cabinet near the wall. The top drawer was open an inch. I was sure it hadn't been before. I stared at it for a long moment, too afraid to move closer, then looked back at the monitor. The drawer in the feed was fully open. That was when I realized something deeply wrong was happening with the timing. The footage wasn't just delayed anymore. It was out of sync with reality entirely. Every small action, every breath, every blink was happening first on screen, then in real life. Like I was living inside someone else's recording. I stood up, slow and careful. My knees ached from the sudden movement. The me on the screen did the same, only a second faster. I backed away toward the door, hand searching for the knob without taking my eyes off the monitor. Then the me on the feed smiled, just slightly, and raised a finger, pointing behind me. The doorknob turned, not in my hand, on its own. It moved just enough to make a soft metallic click, then stopped. I froze, staring at the handle, waiting for something, anything, to push it open, but nothing happened. I swallowed hard, the sound painfully loud in the still air. Then, from the speaker above came another voice, not my own this time, a whisper. "He's still watching." The static warped around the words, low and wet, and then the lights went out. For a few seconds, the only thing visible in the room was the faint blue glow of the monitors. My eyes adjusted, heart pounding in my ears. In the glow, I saw movement, but not from the screen, from the reflection in the window. Something stood right behind my chair, close enough that I should have felt its breath on my neck. The silhouette was wrong, too tall, the shoulders too narrow. I turned on instinct, slamming the light switch up. The room flooded white, empty. The monitor screens flickered rapidly, cycling through every camera feed in the building. Lobby, hallway, stairwell, break room, roof. Faster and faster, like the system was panicking. And then it stopped, back to the security office, except now, there were two of me on screen, one standing, one sitting in the chair. Neither moved. I don't know how long I stood there, staring. The longer I looked, the less the shapes looked human. Their proportions seemed to bend. Arms too long, necks slightly tilted at unnatural angles, faces just a little too smooth. The image glitched again, horizontal lines tearing across the screen, and suddenly, one of them was gone. The standing version. The chair one remained, eyes open, mouth slightly parted, and then, frame by frame, the camera zoomed in on its face. I hadn't touched a thing. The grain broke apart as the lens pulled closer, and through the distortion, I could swear I saw movement behind its eyes. Something looking back. Then, pop. The monitor went black. My body moved before my brain did. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk and aimed it toward the corner of the room. There was nothing there, but when I turned the beam toward the door, I saw it. The outline of a handprint, smudged in gray, pressed against the glass from the inside. 5 long fingers, no palm, just streaks where it had dragged downward slowly. I backed up until I hit the desk. The flashlight trembled in my hand. And then the monitor turned back on, all by itself. Now the image showed the office door, the same one I was staring at, from the hallway camera. On the screen, the door opened, slowly. I looked at the real door. It was closed. But on the feed, something was stepping through. Not human, not exactly. It moved like liquid shadow, bending in the light, flickering through frames. Each step it took seemed to stretch time, a lag between the moment it moved and the sound that followed. It stopped in the middle of the room on the feed, right where I was standing, and leaned forward, face near the camera, whispering something I couldn't hear. I reached for the power switch, desperate to shut it off. Then the sound came through, barely audible beneath the static. Turn around. My hand froze. Every instinct screamed, don't. But slowly, against every of logic I had left, I turned my head. And there it was. Not standing, not floating, just present. The space behind me wasn't empty anymore. I couldn't describe it properly, like the air itself had taken shape. A distortion, a bending of light and noise. It didn't move, but I could feel its attention like heat. Then from the monitor, I heard my own voice. The footage was on a 3-second delay, until I turned to look behind me. The static cracked again, loud, sharp. I spun back toward the screen. On it, I was still standing, still turning, but I hadn't moved yet. And in that frozen moment, I realized what was wrong with the reflection. The me on the screen, the one 3 seconds behind, wasn't turning toward the distortion behind me. He was turning toward something behind him, something I couldn't see. The camera popped once more. The heartbeat sound under the feed grew louder, thudding through the speakers like it was inside the room. The delay vanished. Now the me on the feed was perfectly synced with me. Every blink, every motion, exact, except for one difference. When I looked at the camera, he didn't. He looked just past it, at something over my shoulder. And then he smiled again. When the system rebooted, everything went silent. No hum, no buzz, no static, just quiet. For the first time since I'd started my shift, I realized how loud silence could be. Like pressure building behind the walls, or the kind of silence that feels aware. The monitors were black, but they were still powered on. You could see the faint glow at the edges, like they were listening. I reached for my walkie, thumb hovering over the transmit button. The words wouldn't come. What could I even say? There's another me on camera? The footage is alive? I lowered the radio, hand trembling. Something inside me said, don't report it yet, because whatever this was, it didn't belong in the system. And if I spoke, it might start listening too. Then the sound came back, just one. The low tone of the building's main alarm, the one used for motion detection. A dull, steady beep every 3 seconds. But it wasn't coming from the monitors, it was coming from the hallway. I turned toward the glass window in the office door. The green exit sign glowed faintly through the crack beneath. Beep, another pulse of sound. And with it, a flicker of shadow sliding across the floor outside. Not walking, not crawling, sliding, like it was following the sound. I stepped back from the door. Every breath echoed in the room, too loud, too uneven. The motion detector light above the doorway blinked red once, twice, then froze. The camera feed on the center monitor snapped back to life. Static clearing slowly, like someone was turning the signal back on manually. At first it showed nothing but noise, then it resolved into the hallway again. Only this time, the angle was wrong. The feed wasn't coming from the wall-mounted camera. It was coming from floor level. Something, or someone, was holding it. The image swayed slightly with movement, crossing the hallway toward the security door. I stared at it in disbelief. The lens drew closer, closer, until it was looking right at the bottom of the door. The same door that was right in front of me. Beep, the alarm pulsed again, and on the feed, I saw my own shoes. The camera, whatever was holding it, was now looking up at me through the crack beneath the door. I stumbled back, heart slamming so hard I could taste copper. On the monitor, the feed zoomed in, closer, the lens scraping against the metal. For a second, it felt like something on the other side was breathing in sync with me. Then, all at once, the door's handle twitched. Just once. Then again, harder. And then it clicked. The door swung open half an inch before I slammed it shut again with my shoulder. The entire room seemed to shudder with the impact. I jammed the lock down and stumbled back, panting, staring at the handle. The feed on the monitor glitched, freezing mid-frame. In that half-open doorway on screen, I could see just enough to make out the shape of something standing there. Not a body, a shadow of one, like the empty outline of whoever had been recorded before. It didn't move, it just tilted its head. And then, in a flicker of distortion, it was gone. The screen cut to black again. All at once, every monitor in the room lit up. Not video feeds, not cameras, just lines of text scrolling upward like system logs. Recording archive rebuilding, frame correction enabled, live feed merge complete. I stepped forward cautiously, reading as the words kept flickering up the screen, too fast to follow. And then all the text stopped. Just one line remained, blinking at the bottom. Door opened. The same timestamp I'd seen earlier, the same one from the final log entry. The silence stretched for a long time. Then the lights in the hallway outside turned off. One by one, the hum fading down the corridor like someone was walking away and turning each switch off behind them. The security office light dimmed next, flickering once before dying completely. The monitors were the only source of illumination now. And slowly, the center one came back on. It showed me, but not in real time. This version of me was sitting back in the chair, slumped forward, hand resting beside an empty coffee cup. The timestamp was free slap. 2 minutes before the door log entry, my stomach twisted. This wasn't the present feed, it was replaying something. I leaned closer. The me on screen shifted slightly, breathing shallow, eyelids fluttering like in a dream. Then something dark moved behind my chair. Barely visible, just a faint shimmer at first, then a full shape emerging out of the static. A silhouette. It bent forward, placing a hand on my sleeping shoulder. The moment its hand made contact, the lights on screen flickered wildly, and my image vanished. Just gone. Only the shadow remained, sitting where I had been. The timestamp froze at 3:14. 14 seconds before the log said the door opened, the speaker crackled to life again. Faint audio distortion rising like wind through metal, and underneath it, a voice whispered, "He's gone." The tone was flat, emotionless, like it was reading from a script. Another whisper followed, softer, deeper, "You should go too." Then came the faint creak of a chair, not from the footage, from behind me. My pulse spiked. I turned slowly, afraid of what I'd see. The chair that had been pushed against the desk was now slightly turned, facing me, empty. But the indent in the seat was fresh, like someone had just stood up. I grabbed my flashlight again and flicked it on. The beam swept across the room, catching the edge of the monitor, the filing cabinet, the door. For a split second, it reflected off something metallic on the floor. I stepped closer. It was my name badge. The clip was bent, cracked across the plastic, the back still warm, like it had been sitting under a lamp or under a hand. The security log on the screen blinked once more. Session terminated. And then the monitor powered off. The sound that followed wasn't static this time. It was breathing. Low, ragged. Close enough that I could feel the air move near my ear. I didn't turn around this time. I just whispered, to no one, or maybe to it, "You're not supposed to be here." A pause. Then from the dark, a voice that was mine answered back, "Neither are you." The temperature in the room dropped sharply. My breath fogged in the dim light, and then a single, sharp tone from the monitor. It flicked back on for the last time, a live feed, but not from the office. It was from the outside of the building, the parking lot camera, pointing at the security office window. Through that small rectangle of glass, I could see myself standing inside. Motionless. The timestamp read 03/4/12. I blinked. The figure in the window didn't. Instead, it tilted its head, and then the window, on the feed, shattered inward. I didn't even have time to react before the monitors all cut to black. When the morning shift arrived, they found the office door locked from the inside. The chair was empty. The desk was undisturbed. The coffee cup still warm. But the security logs told a different story. Between 3:11 and 3:14, every camera feed in the building recorded 37 seconds of corrupted footage, overlapping frames of hallways, empty rooms, and the security office. In every frame, there was one constant detail, a faint silhouette sitting in the guard's chair. Unmoving, sometimes with eyes open, sometimes closed, never gone. Later that day, when IT tried to restore the feed, they noticed something else. The backup server, the one that automatically saves footage every hour, had renamed its final folder, not by date or time, but by text. It read, "He left at 3:14, but he's still watching." The incident report was filed under equipment malfunction. The company replaced all the analog cameras with new digital ones. The replacement guard started a week later. On his first shift, he checked the monitor logs. At the bottom of the screen, under the new system banner, a familiar message blinked. Motion detected, security office, 3:11 a.m. He smiled nervously and leaned back in the chair. The same chair. Behind him, on the black monitor, a faint reflection moved, and for a moment the feed whispered something only the mic picked up. Wake up. Fade out. Single low hum. Sustained. Timestamp. Recording lost.